Hey guys, this is Jonty. This is our second Meet an Immigrant show. Last time we were with Imad, and I forgot to start the video. It's so embarrassing, like beginner mistake. So hopefully this time you'll get the intro. Just kind of explaining why I started this. Over the years, I've met some really interesting people, like Imad, like Abdul-Rahman, you're going to meet today. And we've had some really great conversations, and all these people have given me like a window into a different world, a new way of looking at the world, a new perspective. And so, this is just something I love doing. I love meeting new people, learning about their life, learning about their experiences, and it always opens my mind to new possibilities. So I really want to share that with you. So without further ado, I'd like to meet Abdul-Rahman Chao. Thanks for being here, Abdul-Rahman.
Hey, what's up? Thanks for having
me. So Abdul-Rahman, I kind of briefly introduced him in the Facebook Live event I shared with everyone, but I'll go through that right now. So Abdul-Rahman Chao, he immigrated to the U.S. with his family at a very young age. I think he was 2 years old when he came here. He was born in Malaysia, and then but his family's originally from Taiwan. So from Taiwan, they immigrated to the U.S., and Abdul-Rahman has spent most of his life here, growing up first on the West Coast, then on the East Coast. He went to school overseas. He went to school in Medina in Saudi Arabia, and then in Nashville, Tennessee. And in addition to his diverse life experiences, I think it's also really cool that he has formal education in both Christian theology and Islamic theology. And I hope that, this is going to be a fun, insightful time where we kind of learn a little bit more of the nuance of kind of being a minority, right? And with Imad, we saw the struggle of, a refugee coming to America. I think with Abdul-Rahman's story, it's more like, okay, these everyday little things that we do, how do we affect each other? And so I'm really looking forward to this, Abdul-Rahman. Maybe we can start a little bit with your background, because Abdul-Rahman sounds very Arab, right? Like Chao, very Chinese. Okay. And so like putting you in a bucket is like crazy. Like, what are you? Are you one of these Uyghur guys that we hear about in the news? Is your family in camps in China? Like, are you a convert to Islam? I'm sure you confuse a lot of people, right? So maybe you can give us a little bit of that background.
Yeah, thanks, Jonty, for having me. So basically, the real beginning to my family is my grandparents are from China. My mother's side, they are from Taiwan. But let's be honest here, people from Taiwan, I mean, they didn't come from a vacuum. A lot of the people in Taiwan, in addition to the Aboriginal indigenous people in Taiwan, a lot of Chinese people moved to Taiwan 300 to 400 years ago. So my mother's side, they're Han Chinese, but obviously they had moved to Taiwan, and so there's obviously a little bit of a cultural difference between my parents, because my father's side, they're from northern China. They're a little bit different than people that you would find in southern China, like Fujian or Taiwan, etc. So my father's family, they've been Muslim for 24, 25 generations. Allegedly, we are descendants of ethnic Turkic people from Central Asia, but in a very specific sense, I would say we are Hui Chinese Muslims. So we are different from Uyghur Turkic Muslims, and I think the difference is in the fact that Uyghur Turkic Muslims still identify as Turkic. They continue to speak that language. They continue to be uniquely distinct from the rest of the Han Chinese. So where does that leave the Hui Muslims? Well, the Hui Muslims are sort of, I would say, a bit of both, right? So they've Sinicized over hundreds and if not thousands of years. So they've Sinicized and they've changed. So they've adopted Han customs and culture. But depending on the religiosity, you probably won't be able to differentiate them from regular Han Chinese, because they've intermarried with Chinese people for so long that you wouldn't think that they're Hui Muslims. So the only thing that they would probably say is, yeah, we're Muslim, we don't eat pork, etc. But they'll, have their wine on the side, so it's a very interesting dynamic, because Hui Chinese is more of an identity marker that the Chinese government has put on these Chinese Muslims. And so they don't see it as, oh, it's a Chinese person who has adopted the faith. And even for like my mom, when she converted to Islam, there is this assumption that, oh, because you converted, despite you being a Han Chinese, you're Hui now. You adopted that culture.
Oh, interesting. Wow. So really, is that what distinguishes Han and Hui Chinese is really just the religion of Islam? Is that the main difference?
Generally so. I mean, the idea that there is a Han Muslim is foreign to Chinese people.
Yeah,
and for them, it's strange.
Yeah, it's funny. Even I spoke to an Uyghur friend, right? And actually, no, my wife and I, we met there in DC. And she found out, oh, my wife is Muslim, and she found out, oh, she's Han from Hong Kong, right? And she says, like, I can't believe it. Like, what? Yeah, you have to meet my sister. She's not going to believe that, there's Han Chinese that are Muslims, right? And so you're right. I mean, it's funny how even within China, there's this idea that, yeah, your identity is very linked with your faith. This isn't. It's something more static than I think, maybe in other societies, the way they would perceive that religion. It wouldn't change your identity, right? If you're British and then you become Muslim, well, you're still British. You're just a British with a Muslim identity, right? They might look at you different, but you're still British. But for the Chinese culture, you feel that that's a little bit more of a fixed thing. When you do change your faith, you kind of do adopt that culture and you become more like them. Interesting. Okay. So now, and what I also understand is that the Hui Muslims do, like you said, they're Sinicized. They're part of China and they consider themselves Chinese, right? Yeah. So there's no desire to break away from China. And, so do you feel I don't know if you've ever been back or if you talk to people that live there, but is there any pressure on the community like there is in, Xinjiang with the Uyghurs?
So, I mean, I've never been to China. The closest I have been to mainland China is visiting Taiwan, or flying to South Korea. I can see China from my parents' house, from Taiwan. No, I'm just kidding. So, I don't really know about the situation back home in China, but I do know that the Chinese government has also started cracking down on Hui Muslims as well.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it's kind of expanded because you guys are kind of like guilt by association thing.
Yeah, because I think they're starting to understand that religion is not really necessarily, Islam is, to them, they equate Islam with Uyghurs. And so now it's starting to click like, oh, but these Hui Muslims, yeah, they're like Chinese, but wait, they're Muslims still. So where do their allegiances lie? All right. So you have Chinese Muslims, from what I've understood, if a Hui Muslim wants to go to Hajj, they can't be a card-carrying communist. They have to give up, because how can you be a card-carrying communist, an atheist, and then you go to Hajj?
But honestly, the card-carrying communists aren't card-carrying communists. Let's be perfectly honest. Right? They're uber capitalists in China. There's no communism.
Yeah, it's just a name. That's all.
Yeah, it's just a title. But okay, fair enough, man. Okay, that's an interesting dynamic, and I mean, I'd like to even find somebody who can kind of elaborate on that, because it's funny to see how it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic has changed. Because yeah, you're right, the Hui community does identify with China and consider themselves Chinese, and how is that changing now because of the whole situation in Xinjiang? But anyway, okay, let's move beyond that. You really never spent any time there. Most of the time is spent in the U.S., and maybe you can tell us about how do people typically respond to you, Abdul-Rahman Chao. Like, I know my daughter, everybody's confused by her. Aisha Cardin, doesn't look Arab. She doesn't look, they can't place her. So I know people must have the same response to you. And I'm curious, what are those responses? And have you seen like a different reaction from different groups?
Yeah, I think there is there's this innocent, non-hostile reaction, and it's the assumption that, oh well, he's got to be a convert, and if he's not a convert, then maybe his parents are converts. Well, which is half true. My mother is a convert, but the responses that I usually get.
So this is from the Muslim community you're talking about.
Exactly. Okay. And even from non-Muslims.
Okay.
I have had many non-Muslims express utter shock and amazement that this is the first time they're meeting someone who is East Asian and Muslim. They'll know of Indonesia and Malaysia, etc. But to them, East Asians and Islam are kind of in separate realms. As for Muslims, like I said, it's always been exoticization. It's always been, are you a convert? And because I can't fit into any of their boxes, because I'm not a convert, so that's out of the question. And because I'm Asian, and also because I don't appear to be a recent immigrant, right? And so as a result, it really confuses them. It really confuses them a lot. And I remember growing up, my father even had a very ridiculous experience where he had prayed Isha in the masjid, and for those of you who are not familiar, Isha is one of the five prayers that a Muslim would pray in the evening. And so he was at the mosque, he was praying in congregation, and after the prayer was over, the person next to him turns to him and says, "Are you a Muslim?" My father is a person who doesn't really express much emotion on his face. He's usually friendly and smiling, but he when he is confronted with such a comment that clearly did not that clearly came from a place of curiosity as well as the lack of thinking.
Yeah.
He usually just comes out and says something very, very flat and to the point, very terse. So he said yes. You would think that conversation is over. Well, are you a convert? My father said no. And he said, oh, but so if you're not a convert, your father converted. And my father looked at him and said, no, are you going to ask me about my grandfather now? And we just prayed Isha. Why are you asking this question, right? And this experience. I've had this experience as well. And this one time I was at a mosque, and I had to lead the prayer. And this after the prayer was over, the person, one of the individuals, comes after me and says, obviously, when you want to exoticize someone, you have to at least preface it with a few litanies of praise and adoration, right? So it's like, oh wow, mashallah, and mashallah basically means whatever God wills, like hallelujah, if you want to call it that way. So you really know how to pronounce Arabic, really? So how do you read the Quran? How do you read the Quran like that? Like you don't have an accent. Look, what did you do? I said, oh, I studied it and I learned it. But where did you learn it? I said, oh, well, in school, like with a teacher. But how? But how? Like it's just not possible for this person to think that someone else out there could possibly be doing normative behavior for Muslims that is outside of their purview of what they consider to be a Muslim identity.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Wow. That's, it's funny. A lot of times when we think about stereotypes, it's typically white America towards a minority, right? But now we're seeing like, wow, even within minority groups, there are these kind of preconceived notions. And we kind of also victimize each other, right? We can't imagine someone belonging to, even though we know that, Islam is a world religion. And there are people around the world too. And I think in more recent years, I think it's become well known that there are Muslims in China, right? I think probably in the 90s or maybe earlier, it was kind of not as common knowledge. Have you had that experience? Like now it's a little bit better for the next generation, or is that still happening?
I think it's still happening to some extent because a lot of people now broad brush and they will just think, oh, you must be Uyghur. How's your family? And so the thing is, they're coming from a good place.
Yeah.
They're trying to be comforting. They're trying to show empathy, etc. But it still comes back to square one. Oh, you're not Uyghur. So what are you? I remember we went on. It was like I was like Carmen Sandiego.
Okay.
I was like Carmen Sandiego, where this Muslim decided to be, a geography detective, finding out where I'm really from. So he would start listing the countries.
Yeah.
So it's like Indonesia, no. Malaysia, no. And it's like as if these are the only two countries they can think of. That's it, Indonesia and Malaysia. So then they start going into like Mongolia, Afghanistan, no. Oh, Japan, Korea, Philippines. They start going to Vietnamese, Thailand. It's like no. And the thing is, they would say China. They would always try to say China first. But the thing is, I've never been to China. I don't identify as being someone from mainland China.
So you're making it difficult for them too.
That's why I'm Carmen Sandiego, right? so it would be so in that regard, it's like when they're like, okay, I don't know any more countries. I don't know.
Tell me.
I don't know what to. One of them actually even got a little offensive. They're like, okay, you're an alien, okay, and you're just an alien from Mars or something from outer space.
Oh man.
So I said, no, I'm from Taiwan. They're like, oh, made in Taiwan, like the electronics, made in Taiwan.
I wasn't really made, born more like, but
yeah, the thing. No, and the thing is, they're like, so you were born in Taiwan? I'm like, no.
No.
And then they're like, you were born in America. So now we go on another geography tour again. So where were you born? You said you weren't born in Taiwan. You're not born in America. So where were you born in? I was like, okay, where do you think I was born? Okay, China, Korea. Oh. And then Malaysia. Like, what were you doing in Malaysia? I was like, well, that's my parents.
It wasn't my decision, right?
I have no control over that.
Well, you think you have a hard man. Could you imagine like me trying to explain to somebody, where's my family from, right? Like, oh, you're Muslim. Oh, where are you from? Or are you convert? Of course, that's the first thing, right? Are you a convert? And like, no, I'm not a convert. Or are you Bosnian? Are you Albanian? Are you, they knew a few places. No, no. Oh, where are you? And I say Circassian. Like, what's that? Like, and I can't even point to a country, man. I say Russia. Oh, so you're Russian? Like, no, we're not Russian. We're like, we were conquered by Russia in late 1800s. There was this mass exodus. My father's side of the family is, grew up in the Golan Heights, which was Ottoman Empire, became Syria. My mother's side, my grandfather stayed there. World War II, fought, married a German woman, came to America. Like, I have to give this whole story. And, the funny thing is, like, when my wife first met me, like, I just like to get out of the way. It's like, because that's one of the first things. Where are you from, right? And so I explained like where my family's from and this and that. She's like, and then later she tells me like, I thought you were this like extreme nationalist guy, really. And I'm like, why would you think that? Like, because the first thing you told me was your whole ethnic background. And I'm like, well, because that's what everybody asks me. The first thing they meet me, they just want to know that story. And so I just give it to them. But then, of course, then I come across as this, uber nationalist guy. Yeah, I don't know if there's a good way to do this. Like, I could do what you do. Just let them keep guessing.
And sometimes I don't even bother trying to educate them anymore. I'm just like, yeah, okay, whatever, wherever you think I'm from, that's fine.
I know, I give up too. Like, okay, so how about this? And how about Chinese? How do Chinese react? Like Chinese in America. So they meet you. It's like, okay,
they heard of Hui Muslims.
Okay.
And they know of Hui Muslims, but their understanding of Hui Muslims is two things.
Okay.
Ooh, Hui Muslim food. We go to restaurants that are halal, and they're really clean. And also, we know you guys don't eat pork.
You don't eat pork.
That's all they.
Yeah, that's something.
And they don't understand the idea of, faith. To them, if you say to them Islam, they have no idea what that is.
It's funny. There's a restaurant in Hong Kong called Islam Food. The English translation is Islam Food. And I thought it was so funny. Like, what is this Islam food? She's like, oh no, we know that region for the type of cuisine that they have. And then, so it's very famous. It's very well known, and it's people love it. Everybody's like, "Oh, did you go to Islam food?"
Islam food. No. Oh, that's terrible. That is terrible.
No, it's not a bad thing. Hey, it's positive. Look, we get, Muslims got to take where we can get it. Any kind of positive things.
At least Islamic, Muslim, Islam food. I mean, that's a weird name.
I think it's just bad grammar.
That's true. Bad grammar.
So we know how, so that's good. So Chinese react to a little bit differently. That's good. Not quite so confused. You can at least get. They know generally where you're from. That's cool. And we got Muslim general response, American. So is there a place you've ever been and lived where you felt, oh, this is comfortable, this is home, this is like people know me, I know them, like someplace comfortable, I guess, No.
I'm still looking for that place. I feel that wherever I have been, it's been I call it the immigrant Muslim privilege, right? Yes, I am an immigrant Muslim, but when I say immigrant, cultural Muslim privilege, I am referring to the idea that we know, without specifying, we know the ethnic makeup of most mosques in America. They come from one or two regions. And there's nothing wrong with that. My wife is Syrian, and I celebrate different cultures. I love exploring different cultures. But the issue is that because there is this assumption that I'm a convert, and because there is this thought of, well, who's that guy? The experience has always been about, oh, well, does he really know Islam? Maybe we need to re-educate him. Maybe we need to tell him because, he just doesn't know. It's this savior mentality that we need to go and imprint onto this exotic new species that has just shown up in our sacred space. We need to imprint onto them, onto this individual of how Islam really is.
Yeah. And I've had that experience as well, man. Yeah. I mean, it's tough. It's like even like here's an example of first impressions, and impressions based on very superficial things such as how you look, right?
Yeah.
I was in college, and my friend and I were walking, and we met one of his friends, and he introduced me, right? And he joked around. He's like, "Oh, this is Bob. He's a convert, new Muslim." And I just started laughing. Like, "Hey, nice to meet you. My name's Jonty. I'm actually, and I explained my whole ethnic background, right? my family's been Muslim for generations, right? And I know a time when we weren't, but and then I meet the guy. I can't remember, maybe a week or two later. He's like, "Oh yeah, you're the new convert, right?" It's like, "Oh no. I'm gonna kill my friend. I'm gonna kill him." but that's the power of the first impressions, and your look. This is where I can put you. This is a box I can put you in that conforms to my worldview. It makes it, that's made it very easy for me to understand the world around me. And I think we have that shared experience, right? Where, yeah. And it's sometimes, you assume the best in people, but sometimes there are things that happen that it's not quite so benign. And I think that's what you're talking about when you talk about the immigrant cultural Muslim perspective, right? Is that, there's this almost the creation of a hierarchy.
Oh, yeah.
If your family comes from this area, then you're a real Muslim. If your family comes from this area, then, oh, you're actually a convert. Oh, my family's been Muslim for so many generations. Have you taken a Muslim name yet? And then we can go into what is a Muslim name, but that whole discussion.
Yeah, I like onions. Okay, I think onions are really good in cooking, and I think of myself as an onion because the more layers, the more layers you peel back from an onion, right? The more pungent it gets, and so it's like this outer layer of, oh, he's Asian, he's Chinese, oh, he's not Uyghur, oh, he's Muslim, oh, okay, okay, oh, what do you do? Oh, I work in oil and gas. Oh, what do you do in oil and gas? I work in IT. Okay, so you're in IT. Okay. So is how do you like IT? It's well, it's a job, and it's not really my my background. Oh, but what is your background? Oh, well, my background is really in education. Oh, so you're not a teacher? Well, I've been a teacher before, but well, how did you get into education then? How did you go from education into IT? I was like, it's called money. Because no one wants to pay. Okay, so you're an educator then. Okay, so what kind of subjects are you teaching? Oh, yes, I was working in Islamic schools. Oh, okay. So you were working in Islamic school. Interesting. Working in Islamic school. What did you teach in Islamic school? Oh, teaching Islamic studies. Islamic studies? Why would you be teaching Islamic studies? Oh, well, I have a degree from overseas in Islamic theology. Wait, what? You have a degree in Islamic theology? Like from where? Oh, from Medina. What? So you're telling me you went overseas? I'm like, yes, Saudi Arabia is overseas. Last time I checked. So yeah, I did. I'm like, oh wow, so you're like a sheikh. Like, no, not really. But you don't work for a masjid. Oh wait, so you don't work for a masjid, so you're not really a sheikh. I was like, well, I don't really care. So So is that all you've studied? Are you sure you've never like learned IT before? I was like, no, I've done other stuff before. I have a master's in Christian theology. Wait, what? How do you have that? And then the thing is like all of these layers are now being exposed, right? So it's like, oh, he's Asian. He's not an engineer, or he's not a businessman. He doesn't own a store, okay? But he has a background in education, but he doesn't work in education. But he has a background in theology and Christian theology. And what are you doing now? Oh, you're doing another degree in education right now. Oh, so for them, it's I am the oddball of all oddballs to them, and and it only gets more interesting when Arabs find out that I speak Arabic. Like, you would think that someone who tells you that they study 5 years overseas would know Arabic, but for them, they just think of it as, oh, I just know like a few words here and there, right? Duolingo, right? Babbel, this and that. But they are so shocked when they find out that I actually speak Arabic. It completely shatters their mind. And then it becomes like, well, but you pronounce it so properly. I was like, oh, what else am I supposed to do? Pronounce it incorrectly? So all of these backgrounds kind of make it difficult, like you're asking me about, finding a community, because people have now, in Houston, people know who I am, but in many ways, I'm sort of on the periphery. I'm on the margin. They don't really think of me. They know of me. Oh yeah, we know Abdul-Rahman, but I'm not really part of their social circles. They don't know what to talk to me about, because it's, for them, it's like, oh, he works in IT, but he's also like a sheikh. So what do we talk to him about? Well, if I go and ask him about an Islamic issue, I don't want him to feel offended and being put on the spot. So they don't know what to talk to me. They just sit there and just like, oh, how are you? How's everything? How's work? And that's it.
Wow. It's interesting what we're comfortable with, what we're not comfortable with. And, like you said, a lot of this can be just benign. And it's like, and this is something I've kind of increasingly realized with age, is that most people feel comfortable being around those that are similar to them.
Yeah.
Background, right? And that's normal. That's human, right? I think all of us are like that. And I think for us too, the difficulty is there are no people like us. So I'm naturally drawn to people like you who also are surrounded with people who aren't like them. I love people like you. That's my community. That's what I've kind of found. But you're right. I mean, this comfort in being surrounded by people like us is not something I think we'll ever experience. Even if you go back to China, even if you go back to where the Hui people are, you will still be an outsider because you're not culturally Hui, right?
When I went to Taiwan a few months ago, it's how should I put it? So I'm totally out of place in Taiwan. Right? First, with the fact that, he has a lot of facial hair on him. And number two is he doesn't dress like us. I dress like an American bum, if you want to.
That's your style, American bum.
It's just, whatever. Just throw on a t-shirt. He doesn't really dress like us. And the thing is like, they just make the assumption that I'm just someone from Taiwan. Yeah. But the thing is that they get actually a little angry with me because I don't understand sometimes what they're saying. They literally think I'm posing. They literally think I am pretending to not be Chinese.
Interesting.
So just like, he says he doesn't understand, whatever. Like, is this some sort of like prank? Where's the video camera? Right? Like whatever, right? Like, and so I actually wouldn't understand some of the stuff that they're saying, and because they would speak so fast, I'd be like, huh? And and even among Asians, they like, I remember you and I went to a Korean restaurant in Virginia. And I don't know if you still remember that strange experience with the ajima, the I don't know, the auntie of the restaurant. she starts speaking to me in Korean. And I was like, oh, sorry, I don't know Korean. She's like,
You look Korean. What are you talking about?
You're Korean. You're Korean. No, like, no. You're Korean. No, I am not. She goes, and I don't know if you remember, she goes and she gets like 2 other waiters to come to our table, be like, Korean or not?
Oh, wow.
And then they're like, yeah, Korean. I was like, no, I'm not.
Well, in a way that's, you're relating to people who don't even like, there's no connection. That's a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But for you, it's just confirmation that you don't belong anywhere.
I don't belong anywhere,
Oh man. So, okay. So, it's funny. So you've chosen to marry somebody even very different from yourself. That puts you in also another weird circle. Instead of marrying a Chinese person or finding like some other East Asian, you're like, you know what? No, I'm going for a Syrian. And people are not going to know what the heck to do with that.
Yeah. So, I never really had any specific preferences. I was just looking for someone that was compatible and intelligent. And without going to the details, I did speak to someone a long time ago, and I guess I felt they were also an East Asian, a convert, but it felt very foreign. I felt very foreign to them, and they felt very foreign to me. Being married to a Syrian has its perks because when we're out in public, no one assumes we're a couple.
Nobody assumes you're a couple.
They don't think that we're married. They just think, oh, well, she's walking there and he's walking there. Just to be walking side by side. So it's so interesting because when we go to the restaurant, the waiter will they will basically they will think that we're not related, so they try to give us 2 separate checks.
Oh wow, that's happened. That's really happened to you.
Yes. So for them, it's like go somewhere and they'll be like, oh yeah, my husband's going to be coming. And so when I show up, they're very confused, right? So it is kind of funny, but I also found it interesting because I get to pretend that I'm not related to my wife. I get to pretend that sometimes, right? I can just like walk far ahead in the mall, and no one would ever assume that we're
together. It's funny. A friend of mine recently made an observation. He's like, he's been looking at couples, and he's like, do you notice like a lot of couples look like brother and sister? Did you notice that? I'm like, I've never noticed that. We've noticed it a couple times. It's funny. If you pay attention, you will see it. You will see, at least maybe not everyone, but a significant percentage of the population, you'll notice it. And I don't know what it has to do with. I haven't studied this. This is pure anecdotal, right? But I think it's that phenomenon too, where you see owners of dogs, and the dogs look like the owners, or the owner, one looks like the other. I don't know who looks like who, but they look like each other. And I think it's the same thing when it comes to couples. There's this desire to find something familiar among many people, right? And sometimes that familiarity is in how they look, right? Maybe it's because of a similar cultural background. Maybe it is just because of attracted to something that's similar and comforting. But I found it humorous. I was like, I'm going to have to keep an eye out for this in the coming days and weeks.
I'm sure Sigmund Freud would have something in his.
I'm sure he would. I'm sure he has.
Who you marry, and if this is like some weird genetic biological connection, right?
But see, I think like that's why I think. But I do find those are interesting. I mean, everybody has their story, and I like to hear everybody's story. But I do like to also understand, people who do seek out those things and those experiences and those people who are different from them. And so I have to ask you that, like, so you said you met your wife and it wasn't, you didn't go out of your way to find somebody different. It just happened. And honestly, I think in my mind, that's how I think in a pluralistic society like America, that's how it should happen, right? There should be a lot of intermarriage between races and ethnicities because we're just looking for somebody who's similar to us, from a personality perspective, right? Somebody who complements us, we get along with.
Yeah.
But when you do look at it, when you look at marriage, people do tend to marry within the race, even in a very diverse society like ours. And there's something to be said about that. And so, for you, what do you see as maybe some of the benefits of marrying somebody outside of your culture, or some of the challenges even, is it for anybody? Should anybody and everybody consider marrying outside of a culture? Or is this really for people who have a certain perspective?
So the running joke that my wife says about me is, yes, I am East Asian, but she says, you on the deep down, you're just an Arab uncle. And I think that really speaks to how we came to this marriage, and that is, I spent a lot of years overseas.
Yeah.
I don't really talk to Chinese people that much. I don't really find a lot of commonality with Chinese people. I understand Arabic, etc. So you really begin to understand a foreign culture. And you only begin to connect to that culture when you can understand the jokes that they're talking about. And so, yes, I am ethnically East Asian, but I'm also very American, but I can understand a lot of the way how Arabs think. And on the flip side, like, for example, my wife, yes, she comes from a Syrian family, but they're not very cultural. They have some cultural vestiges that they have, but in general, they don't think or behave like the other Syrians that are around them. So, in fact, my wife, whenever they would present like, oh, there's a potential suitor for you, and someone who was Syrian and lived in America, she didn't find commonality with that person. So I guess it's because of the familiarity that I had with the Middle Eastern culture, but I didn't have the baggage that came with it. And she wanted something like that as well. Okay. So I don't think it's for everyone. I think it's only for people who understand the other culture. And I'm not saying that you cannot go into a marriage where you don't understand it. Well, trust me, you're going to be learning about that culture along the way. Honestly, it's really about, do you click with that personality? Do you have this connection with them? So this is what I think the Muslim American narrative is going to start shifting in that way. You now do see some interracial marriages between Arabs and Desis now. You do see that from time to time. An Egyptian marrying a Pakistani, etc., an Indian marrying an Egyptian, or a Syrian marrying an Indian or a Pakistani. I mean, I knew a coworker who was Lebanese and she married someone from Pakistan. So inevitably, it will come forth, this idea of interracial marriages.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of time, and it's happening. I mean, I can even see with my daughter's generation, they're even more open to other ethnicities than even myself in my generation, right? And that happens just because, well, that's familiar, that's normal, right? Yeah. I think when we were growing up, it was a very white dominated society. Now, you're definitely seeing a lot of different ethnic groups, and you're getting, like, because of social media, you're exposed to people from around the world. So it really, even if they're not your next door neighbor, you interact with them regularly. People from different cultures. You go to restaurants, you have bubble tea, all that stuff. It's all cross-cultural exchange.
Exactly.
And so this is an interesting thing that I've been asking myself. Is a lot of people, again, I don't necessarily blame people for asking this, but when you do have these different cultural backgrounds, people from a homogeneous society feel weird because they're wondering, where do your loyalties lie? Are you one of us or are you one of them? right? And I think that's hard for people like us to answer, right? So you have an identity as East Asian, Chinese, specifically Taiwanese, more specifically Hoi, right? And then you also have identity as an American. You grew up here, spent most of your life here. That's your native language. You can't even go back to Taiwan and speak, coherently with the locals. And then you also have this identity as a Muslim, which is a faith. But then because you spent time in the Middle East, you have this kind of understanding of Arab culture as well. So, if someone asks, like, where do your loyalties lie? What do you tell them? Or like, if you honestly have to answer for yourself, like,
I would say that, because given the political climate that we're living in right now, there's almost this attempt from certain groups to reinterpret patriotism as just simply jingoism now, and I kind of push back against that, because I identify with a lot of American cultural themes and ideas. But at the same time, if someone asked me that, I would say that my loyalties is not to a specific person or to a specific country per se. It's to an ideal. It's to a notion, and that's what the framers of the Constitution, the founding fathers of America, they weren't trying to say, "Oh, your loyalty is, to this land per se." It was to the concept of this society where allegedly all men are created equal. Which we know is still
work in progress.
Very much work in progress. But that's what I think makes America really great.
Yeah,
and that is, we can differ on politics. We can differ on in taste buds, whether pineapple should go on pizza or not. Whether that is a culinary abomination and a crime against all chefs, or it's just fusion, whatever. But at the same time, it's really about your values. It's about what is close to your heart. So I think in that way, I do fit within the American context. Funny thing is, I don't, since we're on this topic, I don't really identify as either Republican or a Democrat. Even though I grew up on the West Coast, I've lived on the East Coast, and I've, believe it or not, lived in Utah as a child. Honestly, I just can't sit there and say, well, I ascribe to this party or I ascribe to that party. It's almost like I wish there was a third party that had certain views, etc., that made us either this or that. So
I know I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's a very, it's funny that, you've come to that conclusion. It's the same conclusion I've come to. My loyalty does not lie with a single land. It lies with ideology. And the incredible thing about America is it's a land built on ideas and values. All people are created equal, right? We have inalienable rights, right? There's equality under the law. The president and the poorest person in the land, should be subject to the same laws and the same penalties. There's imperfections there, but those are things that we can work on, right? The ideal is there, and we can all push for that. And you're right, as far as like political ideology, and that does seem to be splitting us, really turning us into two countries, really, a Republican American, a Democratic American. It's something I disagree with, but it's the nature of a two-party system. And I definitely want to have like another, maybe a group call on this topic, because it's a really important thing I think we all need to talk about. And I think a lot of us are getting caught up in the game of choosing one or the other. And, I agree with both sides, and I disagree with both sides on many things. And I think like this, and I think a lot of fair-minded people do. And I think even people who support one specific party really gung-ho, they don't agree with everything. And and the fact that it's tearing us apart is really a dangerous thing. And I think if we look at history, there's some really scary examples of where this can lead. And I think now it's up to us, because the politicians, at least what I've seen so far, aren't going to solve this problem for us. I think it's something we're going to have to solve for ourselves. And it's going to it's going to require some creative thinking and some hard work. But that's one of the reasons I started this, is like to have these ideas and talk them out. But we're coming towards the end, and I did want to give you a chance, like, you've taken all this stuff that you've been learning over the years and you're working on a project from what I understand, right? Do you want to, explain to us what you're working on and, inspiration and, what you think of the benefits of this are?
Yeah. So like I said, growing up in this country, I actually had a lot of times where I had crises of faith, and it was really because of my personal experiences with immigrant Muslims, and I've had to question my belief systems and my experiences, and for a very long time, I was quite bitter. I felt that. I don't really have the opportunity to learn, but it wasn't until I went overseas and I learned, and then I came back and I still felt really disconnected from what I learned there and how to fit that into this context. And so this kind of makes me concerned, because I'm sitting there and thinking, well, what about the regular American Muslim that's going to school, coming home, watching TV? What's going to happen to them? And so part of my belief is that education is a really important thing that Muslims need to tap into correctly. I mean, trust me, Muslims will give you a 3-hour lecture about how it's important to learn math and science. Okay, there's no debate about that. But when it comes to their children's identity and faith, it's always like, oh yeah, the Sunday school, oh yeah, the Friday sermon, and this and that. Yeah. So there's this. So I want to share with parents and their kids this opportunity that I had, and that is, I want to sort of cut through all of this noise and to provide them with some sort of opportunity to learn Islam on a that's less than a full-time Islamic school, but definitely a lot more than a Sunday school. I think if we were to work on tutoring them and educating them and having them think critically, I think that's the way how it should be. So right now I'm actually doing my master's in curriculum and instruction, but I'm also focusing on instructional design and learning. I guess it's like the perfect marriage between education and IT. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I'm really hoping that, even though I'm learning about this, I'm also learning about educational theories as well. I'm really hoping that I can leverage my experience and my skills to provide more tutoring to other parents and their kids, as well as maybe come up with some sort of learning platform. For kids to be able to access this kind of knowledge regardless where they are, especially now with COVID, right? Schools are closed, Islamic schools are closed, Sunday schools are closed. What are you going to do about that, right? So I don't think that this is going to be solved in a couple months. It's going to be an ongoing project that I'm going to be doing to launch, and also I do plan to start making inroads into writing a book or two for kids, for middle school kids, because a lot of the books out there I feel inadequate. So I want to form and revolutionize the way how Islamic studies is taught and how it's learned.
Okay, that's great, man. Thank you. And do you have like a site that people can go to learn more?
Yeah, so I've kind of fallen off of Facebook. So I mean, I do have a Facebook page. It's basically my full name on Facebook, but I'm more active now on Instagram. It's basically a.r.chao on Instagram, and that's where I create like quotes or resources for parents on education and Islamic studies, etc.
Oh, that's great. Okay. And I'll definitely share that in the comment section after we're done here. And Yeah, I like ending. I want to try to end these little sessions with kind of a lesson learned. One of the, and I'd like other people to share what they've learned by listening to this conversation, or things that they've related to. Pick actually has been commenting. She was surprised by one of your stories, and she says, like, don't feel bad. Same thing here. I think that was in reference to kind of how not people not being able to place you right and understand, like, what is a Chinese Muslim, what, and then everybody's confused by you. She's definitely had that experience from every side. For me, I worry about this country long term, because I think we have this perception that a lot of the bias, a lot of the prejudice that we feel is coming from white America towards minorities. But I know that within our communities, there's a lot of bias, there's a lot of prejudice, there's a lot of racism. And, when we end up in a country where there is no clear majority, where we're all minorities, we need to have a really clear idea of how we're going to get along, right? Instead of just like kind of, getting with groups that we identify with and kind of battling it out with each other, right? I think that's a potential paradigm that could happen. I really would hate to see that happen. I think, we shouldn't have this perception that once the minorities are, no longer under the oppressive yoke that of white America, that things are going to be, it's going to be a golden age. I don't think so. I think, human beings, we all have bias. We all have bias. It's, what happens is who has power. Whoever has power, whether it's in a country or within the community, that those people have more of a say than others. And I think it's on those who have power, and whatever community they happen to be a part of, that they think about those other people and their needs, and be respectful of them, and really sincerely try to understand. Like, look, I've been in conversations where people can be very insulting, asking about your background, and people can be very genuine and curious and trying to understand your background. So it's not just the act of asking about somebody's background that is either offensive or inoffensive, right? It's why they're doing it. And human beings have this knack for understanding, where's this coming from? Is it coming from a good place where you're really trying to understand someone different than you? Or is it coming from a, not so genuine place where you're trying to put somebody in their place, or you're trying to make them feel like an outsider, and that is really, for me, that's inexcusable. There's, I'll end with one last story. My uncle visited the Caucasus like years ago, and he told me about a conversation he had with one guy there. There aren't many black people there. So I guess there was one African student who had come to the area and was studying. And this person my uncle was speaking to followed that man around town. And it sounds creepy, right? And I'm sure from that poor African guy's perspective, it was really scary. Like, there's this guy following me around wherever I go. But the way he explained it to my uncle was like, I was so curious. I'd never seen someone with skin so dark. I had to understand, like, is this real? And he was just naturally curious. I mean, it's creepy. Don't get me wrong. I mean, but for me, it demonstrates the natural curiosity of human beings. And if we're just sincerely curious, we want to learn about somebody else who looks different than us, speaks different than us, has a different, culture than us. I think it can be a very beautiful thing, So I remind myself and everyone, let's, try to really just be genuinely curious people, trying to learn about the world around us. And, I don't believe we can offend people in that way, So Abdul-Rahman, thank you so much for sharing your story. I appreciate it, man. It's been a pleasure. God bless you and everyone. And we'll catch you all next time. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.